pull out your shark tooth necklaces and slap on your thongs, or flip-flops for the majority of my viewer base, as today on Retro Game On, we're heading to the beach. And no, not that beach, or that one, or even that one. Nope. Today, we're heading to the Caribbean. You're welcome. Released in 1992 for the Sega Mega Drive and Genesis, Greendog, the beach surfer dude, was developed by Sega Technical Institute. Yes, the very same as Sonic 2. The interesting thing about Sega Technical Institute is that while it was based in California, it actually consisted of American and Japanese developers all working together, although there were problems with this thanks to language and cultural barriers. Retro Gamer issue 175 has a very interesting article about this as it explores Sonic 2, so it's well worth reading if you want to know more. But Sega Technical Institute were also known for other such games, such as Kid Charmeleon. The Japanese portion of that, also known as Sonic Team, have themselves developed loads of classic Sega games over the years, so Greendog definitely had a lot of talent to back him up. You may find yourself wondering why Greendog didn't see much success with such people behind him. Some of you may not even have heard of the game before. I certainly hadn't until I came across it myself. So, it raises the question, was Greendog a failed mascot for Sega? Let's delve in and find out. Greendog, the beach surfer dude, starts with a true tragedy. Greendog, having been dumped by a gnarly wave, is about to have some heavy facts laid on him. Not only is he now in some alternative form of our world, but a strange pendant is now around his neck, which he is unable to remove. Somehow, a beach babe named Bambi, that is apparently his girlfriend and way out of his league, giving hope to all of us, tracks him down, differing dimensions be damned, and lays down the hard truths. The pendant is of ancient Aztec origins, and like all magical and mysterious pendants worth their salt, carries a curse that will make all living creatures go berserko and attack you, herself being the obvious exclusion. I think Greendog has a real catch here. Not only can she transcend time and space, but she's also impervious to ancient curses. Additionally, the curse stops him from surfing. Bummer! So, what is Greendog to do? Well, luckily, Bambi has the answer. There are 6 pieces of separated Aztec treasure that need to be reunited, all of which are scattered around the Caribbean islands. Find them all and piece them back together, and the curse will be listed. There might even be a prize. Greendog, like many titles released in the early 90s, is a platformer. However, while most will have an original gameplay mechanic to make it stand out, a gimmick if you will, Greendog doesn't really get inventive. There is a bit of variation between the levels, which I'll refer to shortly, but Greendog himself is limited. He can duck, he can jump, he can throw his frisbee as a weapon, but aside from jumping from vine to vine, he's not tubular in the slightest. In fact, he's quite plain. There are pickups, however, these are limited in their availability and don't do anything that imaginative themselves. One is an automatic weapon of sorts, another will freeze the enemies for a limited amount of time, while the other makes you invincible for a short period. There's also a doggo, which is usually a plus, but this doggo can be a bad doggo depending on the circumstances. Obviously, Greendog doesn't feed him enough, as for the most part, he'll try to eat all the junk food that also acts as pickups to score points. If a bone appears and he gets it though, he'll leave the junk food alone. However, if you get the bone, the dog goes feral and attacks the enemies for you. While Greendog himself is standard, there are some variations in the levels at least. Most are as you'd expect for an early 90s platformer, but a few involve a skateboard and roller skates, while another has you frantically trying to stay airborne in a pedalcopter while enemies attack you and junk food falls from the sky, dangling from little parachutes. These are fun and a nice break from mediocrity, but they do get repeated a lot, becoming more annoying than anything as you're trying to progress through the game. And talking about progress, it's important to point out that this game has no password save, let alone a battery one. Yep, it's all point based and designed to be played in one go. Not that this is a distant impossibility or anything, you could probably play the whole game in roughly an hour after some practice if you wanted to, but for those of us who aren't that dedicated but still want to see Greendog find all the treasure, don't fret. There's a level skip cheat. Yay! There are plenty of other cheats too, depending on how lazy you are, but if you just want to play the game normally but not in one sitting because you're an adult and have shit to do, there are options. Otherwise, there is a checkpoint system that is surprisingly lenient and a number of lives and continues. The level of difficulty is quite low anyway, but there are a few crappy aspects that might catch you out. For one, I noticed in a few levels that if you miss something like a moving floating platform or fall off one, some don't come back at all, essentially trapping you as you have no way to proceed. Additionally, the hit detection can be quite questionable sometimes, leading to unfair deaths and frustration all around. As the curse is a thing, there are many enemies going berserko at you, however, there are only 3 or 4 enemy types that are just reskinned for each level. The boss fights are all basically the same thing over and over as well, which leads to an anticlimax every time you finish a level. One positive of Greendog is the visuals. While Greendog himself is quite faceless, literally he has no face and conceals his personality within his stupid shorts and his hat or hair, the environments are quite well drawn. My favourite levels include the subway station and the aquarium with the guys in the background who look like they would try and sell you a DVD player from the back of a van. Even though the gameplay itself is uninspired, at least the environments have enough variety to keep you interested long enough to keep playing. It's a shame that several were reused through the game though, an attempt at making the game longer I guess. The sound design is of a reasonable quality level too. There are plenty of sound effects that aren't offensive, and the music is cheery enough and also of a non-offensive nature. But, as the old adage goes, pretty things to look at and listen to don't automatically make a fun game to play. Poor Greendog. It's not like Greendog is a bad game or anything, but the lack of originality does make it quite basic. Sure, the variation of gameplay between levels can be a plus, but together, overall, it's just too average. I could go on about Greendog being a failed mascot for Sega considering he was never seen or heard from again apart from a Game Gear port, even more so considering the game ends with the whole "your adventure has just begun" type of cliche. However, I was watching Kim Justice's video on this game, which will probably be much better than how this video will turn out, and the top comment there was written by one Michael Latham. Mr. Latham was the producer for Greendog, along with other Sega titles like Home Alone and Eternal Champions. He had this to say: Greendog is based off a board game that Shinobu Toyota bought as a license and got thrust upon me when I joined Sega. The character design was locked in. I had to invent all of his story and game in record time. But no, the dev team didn't give up. We had a very small cart and development time, so it was never meant to be a mascot for Sega. Quite an interesting perspective indeed, and one that I assume is not made up because, well, who would make that up and pretend to be a game producer from the 1990s? Although, I've been unable to find any information about this board game online, so interesting. Regardless, Greendog is just another forgotten platformer and a product of its time. He's not too bad to play, but I wouldn't pay more than a $5 for the privilege.